Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Common Thread podcast. Tonight we'll be discussing the midterm elections. We're here with Celeste, Amanda, and Mo, and two guests, Mike and Brian, representing the College Democrats and College Republicans, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure. So my name's Michael Nominski. I am the president of the College Republicans, actually graduating in a couple of days, so that's exciting. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm Brian Monroy. I'm the treasurer of the BU College Democrats and a sophomore studying political science. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming. Tonight's kind of the hot topic probably in election sphere right now is the recent midterm elections. We saw some pretty, not necessarily surprising, but some pretty big upheavals, especially with the legislative branch, the House and the Senate. And we kind of want to start off with election highlights. So just asking you guys, Mike and Brian, what do you think were the biggest highlights or your biggest surprises or kind of biggest moments for you in those midterm election results?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, being, centered here in Boston and working in Massachusetts, definitely one of the bigger highlights was Charlie Baker winning the governorship. The BU College Republicans did a lot of work there, and it was nice to sort of finally see that work come to fruition. You know, we had originally done work 2 years ago with Scott Brown and Mitt Romney, and when those campaigns didn't turn out well, it can be upsetting. So it's nice to finally get that win under your belt. In terms of surprises, I would probably say, I had thought the Republicans were going to take back the Senate, but I would actually probably say the race in North Carolina. A lot of people thought that was going to go for Kay Hagan, and Tom Tillis ended up pulling it out. And it's nice to see. I have a lot of friends down there from internships in the past who were working on, Senator-elect Tillis's campaign. And quite frankly, I was sort of shocked that he ended up pulling it out. So it was definitely great to see, another victory in North Carolina.
And Mike, where are you from?
I'm originally from New Jersey.
Okay, got it.
Same question.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I guess as a representative of as a member of the Democratic Party and representative of the BU College Democrats, it's a situation like these. It's hard to sometimes put a positive spin on the events like this that transpire. But you can't. These things happen. Personally, I wasn't. I had expected the Republicans to take the Senate. Excuse me. I didn't. I wasn't surprised when that happened. I guess the only surprise was by the margin of their control of the Senate. That I guess was surprising. Some races, as you previously mentioned, North Carolina, that they were closely contested races, but eventually went to the Republicans. Even here in Blue, Massachusetts, we saw the governor's seat go to the Republican Charlie Baker, it just tells us a lot about what the mistakes that were made in the Democratic campaigns and what we can do to improve in the future.
I think one thing, especially for my home state, we saw some really close runs that ended up being, by 1,000 voters. So, for example,
Remind us where you're from.
I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. In our House, especially, I think our House and Senate race. So for the Senate, we really thought we were going to stay Democratic. It was an easy lead. My dad actually works as a biostatistician, so he helped actually with the stats, projecting this victory. And, by 1,000 votes, it actually ended up having to count all the absentee votes, and it went to a Republican representative. At the same time, in our House race, it seemed like more than it was dominated in the media. We saw that race because of the social issues that came up with this campaign. So I feel like, especially for this past representation, this past cycle, the media played a big role in representing, especially with those big social issues like healthcare. I think is a big one. Our recent kind of scare or topic of Ebola. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you guys have any opinions about how the media might have influenced those campaigns, or any specific incidences you can think of, or if you think that maybe the media was just like it always has been, kind of across the board.
I think the media played a huge role in just fanning the flames of Ebola panic in this country. Don't get me wrong, Ebola is a huge problem in these West African countries, and it's decimating populations there, and it's a grave public health concern. But for the media to insinuate that the Ebola outbreak was imminent in the West and in the United States was not responsible. And I think Shepard Smith of Fox News, of all people, summed it up pretty nicely, saying, I mean, conservative outlets wanted to make it seem like the administration was not doing enough, whereas liberal outlets wanted to, and the president wanted to do more than what was probably necessary in order to address the public's concerns.
Right. We actually had a podcast about Ebola, and the one thing, we had a public health professor here with us, and she said that the CDC should not have said that Ebola, we were not going to see any of it in the United States, and that was a big mistake. And then, again, we see in the media those two sides, exactly. One saying we were totally doing enough, the other saying that we're not. What do you think about that, Mike? Any comments?
Yeah, so, I think that sort of the Ebola outbreak is sort of more representative of a larger trend that we were seeing at that time. And, there sort of was this sort of gut reaction by the media, and that's sort of just how American people respond, and people respond in general to a possible outbreak of a disease. But, I would not credit the Ebola outbreak for what was Republicans' victory and sort of the media and that for influencing voters whatsoever. But what I will say is I think that the Ebola outbreak was overall representative of a larger trend of the president's failed foreign policy, which many voters were going to the polls to vote against the president on. And, you saw over the summer things like ISIS and the Israeli-Gaza conflict and things like that. And I think that in the end, while Ebola did not, many voters were not going to the polls saying, I'm voting against a Democrat because of the handling of Ebola. I think it was representative of this overall trend of the president and his administration botching foreign policy. And I think while Ebola wasn't, that key defining issue, I think it capped off that trend very well, and sort of, more people were going to the polls to vote against his foreign policy than necessarily his domestic policy, which this election was supposed to be about, but that changed massively in the summer and fall months.
I was talking to someone the other day, this is changing gears a little bit, and he made an interesting comment that politics now are being characterized by new social topics. So it wasn't that long ago that the key hot-button issues were, abortion and gay marriage. And it seems like socially we're moving away from that. And now the big issues are healthcare, how Ebola is being spoken of, gun ownership and rights. What do you guys think about that trend?
Yeah, so issues vary from election to election based on what sort of the hot button issue of the time is, and you saw it with the president's move to postpone his decision to make executive action until after the election, because had he done it before the election, it would have made immigration an issue for both bases of both parties. But I do sort of think that issues vary from time to time in elections, and I certainly do not think issues like abortion are dead. But I will say, in terms of one issue you touched on, I think the country is sort of moving in the correct direction on gay marriage and in support of that. And as a Republican, I'm proud to say I am in support of legislation that would allow for gay marriage. I think the country is moving in the correct direction about that. But in some of the issues, in healthcare and abortion and all these other issues, these issues may take sort of a sideline in this campaign, but they're certainly bound to be resurrected in other campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. While these issues may not have been very prominent in this past election cycle, they're definitely still relevant. But I do think that because the general trend is in the right direction in terms of gay marriage and reproductive rights for women, and I think that's probably the reason why they weren't as important to voters. But healthcare, obviously that's always going to be an issue, because people that voted for Republicans were voting against healthcare. I think it's something like 48% of Americans have a negative view of the Affordable Care Act, and I think that has a lot to do with the obvious reasons that are the botching of the healthcare.gov website. But that's since been taken care of, and I don't think that the president's administration does a good job of touting their successes, because it's a story of success, but they don't tell it very well, and they don't tell it very often. To quote Governor Deval Patrick. So yeah, but I do believe healthcare is going to remain in the conversation for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking forward for the next, 2 years of President Obama's term, I can't help but think that, like, how are we getting everything passed? How is anything going to be productive? It's really hard to have an executive, even the past 2 years when we still had control, or the Democratic Party still had control, or at least part of the legislative branch. But now, it's really deadlocked is how to describe the situation. I think with the Affordable Care Act, despite the issues surrounding it, we definitely didn't have full support on either side to make that not only successful, but to make it something that people were interested and educated about. I'm in a sociology of healthcare class now, and many people were unaware of exactly what the legislation meant, including that college students till you're 26 years old can stay on your parents' insurance. So I feel like there's that miseducation gap of what actually happened in the bill because we're having such a deadlocked issue surrounding it. That's not necessarily saying that the bill is correct or that that doesn't distinguish the 48% who necessarily don't agree with it. But I'm just wondering, looking forward, what do you think is going to get accomplished? Is anything going to be able to get done, or what do you guys think?
Well, I think that really is up to the president himself. In the past, past couple of years, I mean, maybe skipping George Herbert Walker Bush, but going back to Reagan, you've seen presidents who in their second midterm, third election cycle total, who have seen these huge opposite party waves come in. So in George Bush, it happened in 2006. It happened to Bill Clinton as well. And both of those presidents were able to work with the opposing party and get things done. So, I mean, I do really think it is up to the president. What I will say is sort of, you touched on the health care law. It is a different situation because when President Obama came in, he didn't need Republican help, and he critically ignored all Republican demands on the Affordable Care Act because he didn't need them. And when that law came out as it did, and many people opposed it, the country told him, no on that, and the Republicans were elected to stand and oppose to that. So, things may get a little bit tricky with the health care law, and it seems like it is having some issues, and I do think that if Republicans could put forward not necessarily a full repeal, but a common sense issue thing to work out some of the issues with the law, that he should think about working with them. But at the end of the day, I do really think it comes down to the president, because you do have two houses of Congress who are representative of the people, who can put forward good choice legislation, and if the president is willing to work with them, then of course things can get done. But I'm not sure if this president is inclined to do that.
I'm always hopeful that there will be more compromise in the future between the House and Senate and the president's administration. I don't think it's exactly fair to rest that responsibility of compromise on solely the president and his administration, or solely Senate or House leadership. I think there has to be ground given up on both sides. We haven't seen that in the previous 2 years, and Americans took notice. And now we have issues like a potential government shutdown surfacing again, and I just think Americans in general, across party lines, are just tired of the blame game between the two parties, and they just want to see people come closer to the center and just move legislation forward.
Yeah, I think the last kind of topic about healthcare I'd like to bring up is Mitt Romney and Mitt Romney's success with the healthcare initiative in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing a lot of states like Vermont is trying to institute a single-payer system. So this idea that kind of maybe it's going to be a state-by-state reform or re-legislation opposed to at the national level, in my mind, that makes a lot of sense because we're 50 states. We're an enormous country with tons of different political backgrounds, geographical backgrounds. Do you think that it needs to be done at the local level, or do you think that's something that still can be done at the national level, like was attempted with the ACC?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's nowhere in sort of the Constitution does it allow for the federal government to regulate healthcare. And like you said, we're a nation of 50 states. You said you're from Alaska. I'm from New Jersey. Alaska and New Jersey are incredibly different in so many aspects. And I do think, sort of a lot of people criticize Mitt Romney for attacking the president's health care law when it was based off of the Massachusetts law. Well, the critical difference between the Massachusetts law and President Obama's law is that the Massachusetts law only applies to Massachusetts. And, I do sort of think that if other states were to take up health care reform and things like that, it would work out much, much better than what the president has proposed. And that's sort of how our Constitution is set up for, a solid break in powers between the federal government and the state governments. Now, the Supreme Court seems to disagree with me that this law is constitutional, but I completely disagree with the Supreme Court that it should be up to the states to determine how to best structure healthcare reform for their individual state.
Well, I don't think I agree that regulating healthcare would be inherently better under control of the individual states. Although it could be successful in both cases, I think the Affordable Care Act, as it is, has had a lot of successes. According to a study conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation, they found that though costs rise for some people, premiums are actually lower under the Affordable Care Act for most people, and that they also predict that prices will continue to be more stable in the long run and avoid those ecstatic fluctuations that we've seen in the past because of increased federal regulation.
So Celeste brought up Mitt Romney, and looking forward to the next couple of years, he is one of the names that is being thrown around for the 2016 elections, and there's some pretty big names right now that we're hearing. For Republican Party, we're hearing Jeb Bush, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, Mitt Romney. The Democratic Party, we're hearing Hillary Clinton is the really big name right now. Elizabeth Warren, perhaps. Joe Biden, he's close to my heart. And who knows how it's going to go. But I think the big question right now, with Obama leaving office after his second term, is will the executive office remain Democratic or will it switch to the Republican Party? What do you guys think will happen?
Well, I do think the sort of Democratic Party is going to have things stacked against them coming in, mostly to the fact that the Obama administration has sort of just botched so many things in the past 6 years, and with 2 more to go, and a failing foreign policy and sort of issues like that can that can all continue to go and can significantly hurt the Democratic nominee as sort of that name brand association, Democratic to Democratic. I do really think it sort of depends on the candidate. A lot of people are saying this is Hillary Clinton's election, and it doesn't matter who the Republicans nominate. I'd say you have to be very cautious on that. Hillary Clinton has had plenty of failures in her life, and dating back to healthcare in the Clinton administration. As a senator, she failed to do anything significant. In 2008, she lost to a little-known candidate at the time named Barack Obama for the Democratic nomination for president. So, Hillary Clinton, I guess in a blunt way of putting it, is bound to screw things up, and it is very possible she could win again. But at the same time, the Republicans need to be careful to nominate a great candidate who's well-spoken and has great ideas moving things forward. Mitt Romney could be one of those. Rand Paul could be another. I do think there are some people on the other end of the spectrum, Ted Cruz being one of them, who are simply unelectable on a national level. So I do think it'll end up changing hands. I do think people are sort of tired of this, sort of Democratic sort of movement in the White House of ignoring the Constitution and sort of just trying to do things your own way and not paying attention to the way our government is set up. But, like you said, it's simply way too early to tell at this point. There are so many things that can happen. Hillary Clinton has even seen problems with her health. That's an absolute possibility. And so, it's, I can't wait for 2016, but it's so tough to judge now.
Could you elaborate really quick on the Ted Cruz comment you made where you don't think he's electable?
Yeah, I do. As a Republican, I sort of agree with a lot of things of what Ted Cruz says. But in my opinion, you have to be elected by the whole country. It's one thing to be elected in a conservative state, but being elected in a conservative state and having extreme conservative principles isn't going to get you elected on a nationwide basis. And you sort of even saw Mitt Romney being hit too far for being too right, and he was sort of dragged right in that process. And who knows? Perhaps President Obama could sort of push some left-wing agenda that could bankrupt the country, and then people are going to have a reaction where they're looking for hardline conservatives to win. But I just think at the moment somebody like Ted Cruz, or there's even talk of Dr. Ben Carson running for office, are just simply too right for the general public to elect. And it, while you could garner, maybe a certain aspect of the vote, you're never going to break that 50+ +1 majority, and I just don't see Ted Cruz winning a general election.
Okay. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I agree that it's early to speculate, but it's likely to be an uphill battle for Democrats. As far as President Obama's foreign policy, I'll be the first to admit it's been far from perfect, but we can't let the successes that we have had be overshadowed by the negative. I mean, we've withdrawn our troops for the most part from 2 different fronts that we've been in for over 10 years. We have reached deals with. There was a climate change deal done with China that was unprecedented last month. We've seen Al-Qaeda significantly weakened with the death of Osama bin Laden. So, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. In terms of how things look for 2016, it looks as if the Democrats are in a prime position to take back the Senate in 2016. The House, probably not yet. I've read some predictions that estimate that the House will probably not be able to be taken back by the Democrats until at least 2022. So, but in terms of presidential candidates, for the Republicans, I see Rand Paul being a strong candidate. For the Democrats, all the talk has been centered around Hillary Clinton, but I think it would be wrong to think that a Clinton ticket would be a slam dunk for the Democrats. It would be a hotly contested race, no matter what. And I don't know. I feel like all this talk, Hillary Clinton, the buildup of Hillary Clinton, could potentially backfire on her. Again, to quote outgoing Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, he was interviewed on Meet the Press a couple of weeks back, and he said that he commented that it might be off-putting for Hillary Clinton to build herself to make it seem as though it's inevitable that we'll see a Hillary Clinton run for the presidency, because people read inevitability as entitlement, and so that's something that Democrats should really avoid if they're planning to seriously have a shot at keeping the White House.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I think we really appreciated your comments and your commentary, and hopefully in 2016 we'll all be surprised, or maybe not. We'll see what goes down.
Yeah.
I want to just wish everyone good luck for the finals period in front of us. Congratulations on graduating soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Are you graduating a semester early?
Yeah, I'm one semester ahead. Yeah,
okay.
so.
Wow. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Thank you both. You're both so so articulate about your positions and your respective parties, and I really appreciate that you can, shed light on both positive and negative aspects for both your positions. And Mo, I apologize. I'm going to call you out for a second. Mo,
Sorry.
can you please tell us the political party you identify with?
Republican.
Ah! Okay, so even though I do not identify as a Republican, and I'm sure you could tell that Celeste is not either, it's very exciting that we have a Republican co-host of the Common Thread, because we have not had one before, not intentionally, but just, most people on this campus tend to be liberal or identify as Democrats.
We want to say sorry, Mo, for ganging up on you in the past 2 weeks. We hope might have helped you realize some people on
great
campus
to be
who
here,
agree
yeah.
with you.
No, but it is great having, I think a more
Different
diverse,
view, yeah,
a different
exactly.
view on the show. So super exciting. He was making some great faces while we were.
I don't think it was
taping.
any secret if you were here.
No. Anyway, like Celeste said, have a great finals week. Brian and Mike, thank you again so much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
thanks for inviting us. Yeah.
And we will see you guys next year. Thanks so much. This is The Common Thread.